everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. I'm joined alongside my co-host, London Beth, and special guest, Tony Sapita. Very excited to have Tony on today as he is the baseball guru of the Chicago White Sox. I'm obviously the Cubs fan of the group. London is pretty much the middle ground. So we're going to have a bit of a debate today. We're going to have a lot of fun. But today we are going over both the Cubs and the White Sox going into the 2021 season. Expectations, offseason moves, you name it, we got it. So Tony and London, thanks for joining today. Super excited for it. And let's kind of jump into things. So to start, overview of both teams. We're going to go from Cubs to Sox in both segments. So, just to lead things off out of the gate for the Chicago Cubs, Anthony Rizzo still does not have a contract extension set up with the Chicago Cubs. He is what Cubs fans are calling the modern day Mr. Cub. Mr. Cub is really Ernie Banks, the recent Ernie Banks. And how does this guy not have a contract? I just kind of want to hit it out there. But Tony, I know that you were kind of shaking your head right there. How does this guy not have a contract? He's been offered a contract. It was 5-year, $70 million. Complete disrespect to a guy that has brought nothing but, fans to the franchise. He's the guy that caught the World Series winning ball. How do you not pay this guy? Tony, what are your first thoughts on that?
I mean, he's one of those guys where, okay, they're going to look at it analytically and be like, oh, maybe he's, starting to be past his prime a little, something like that. But like you said, he's just a guy you got to pay. And it's almost worse that those numbers came out on that contract than if they were just like, we got nothing yet. We just haven't figured out. I just saw Tyler Lockett is making 4 years, $70 million. He just signed that. A football player, which has a salary cap, let's not forget, is making more than what Anthony Rizzo was offered to be exactly the face of your franchise, the face of arguably a top 2 historical team in the oldest sport in America. So I think it's ridiculous that they haven't signed him yet. As a Sox fan, obviously we mentioned, I really hope he does come back. I like him. It hurts to say it, but I think he's awesome. It's kind of like, I didn't like the Colts, but I like Peyton Manning, that kind of thing. So I hope they can figure it out because baseball's better with Anthony Rizzo on the Cubs.
Yeah, and, people are saying, oh, he's going to go to Milwaukee just to kind of stick it to the Cubs, and which, anything could happen. And the problem is kind of going off that is you also have to play kind of devil's advocate here. He was willing back in, I believe it was 2015, 2016, willing to take a huge pay cut. It was only like a 5-year, like $44 million or $50 million contract, super low compared to, and that was in his prime, by the way. Like you were saying, like he's kind of leaving his prime, even though his numbers still look great from what they were when he was in his prime. He did that once. So the Cubs were like, okay, we have Chris Bryant to sign. We have Javier Baez to sign. We have Wilson Contreras to sign. Rizzo's the guy that was willing to do it once. Let's throw it out there again. But I would rather the Cubs get rid of, Chris Bryant than try to, cheapo Rizzo. I would like Rizzo overall. And London, I see you clapping at London. What are your thoughts on this contract? We talk about contracts all the time with the Bears, but this is just a slap to the face for Rizzo. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that 100%. I was reading a lot of stuff on, Twitter and different kinds of stuff about this Anthony Rizzo contract. And honestly, Tony, I agree with you 100%. They should have just not said anything. I don't know why Chicago teams lately, whether it's the Bears or the Cubs or, thank God the Blackhawks come out and said, hey, we're going to be bad. And then 3 years later, we're good. But for some odd reason, some of the Chicago teams just can't get it right. If you don't have anything set in stone and you don't want to anger one side of the public or not, just don't say anything. Just like Tony stated, don't talk about what the contract is. Just say, hey, we're in the works. We'll see what comes out. And then, everybody can go to sleep at night and, not worry about the face of the Cubs since, 2016 and before leaving us. And I agree. Bryant is a great third baseman. I still think he is one of the top players in the MLB. The problem is, pretty much ever since he got married, he's just kind of done one of these. Not blaming his wife, whatever like that.
You're blaming the baby. You're not blaming the wife. You're blaming
not
the
blaming the wife, not blaming the baby, whatever. I mean, I hope it's not like a Tony Romo, Jessica Simpson like scenario there. But, if we're going to sign one of those two players, Anthony Rizzo is consistent. First base is one of the most important positions, on the field. And he constantly is he's never shown us that he's not one of the best first basemen. So I think coming out saying, it's going to be 70 million, undercutting him like that, it's just, again, a terrible example of another Chicago team not handling their contracts correctly and, bringing it out to the public.
Yeah, no, and you're totally right. I think that we're all on the same page that it was disrespectful. The Chicago teams clearly do not know how to keep their mouths shut. They're just, they want to say it out there to feel part of the conversation with these other teams like Patrick Mahomes, Mike Trout, like these giant contracts. Well, you don't want to be out there in the open talking about you cheapoing out some of your best players in franchise history, if not some of the best players in Chicago sports history, whether that be stats wise or to the community. And obviously Chicago is a big community city, and a guy like Rizzo, who has just done nothing but turned around Wrigleyville himself. It's mind-boggling. Kind of going off of that subject, kind of like going into what the Cubs are looking at. The Cubs brought back Jake Arrietta this offseason. Jake Arrietta is not the Jake Arrietta of a couple years ago. There's no doubt about it. He got paid in Philly. Good for him. I'm happy he was able to do that because really in Philly, he wasn't the greatest player. In regards to our entire pitching staff, Darvish heading out, I wasn't upset about it. And I said this before to London, totally offline. And Tony, I would love to hear your take on this. But Darvish is the worst player in the MLB when it comes to media and criticism. By far the worst. COVID could have not been a better season for a guy like that. No fans in the stands. Media is very limited. Can only ask him a few questions. So he was able to focus, and that's why he had a Cy Young caliber season. And toward the end, he was, slowly going off. And with that contract, for what we got back from him, I think that it was one of the better moves for the Cubs. And the pitching staff still does not look that bad on paper. You have Alec Mills, who's thrown a no-hitter. You've had Jake Arrieta, who's thrown, a no-hitter before. 2 no-hitters, actually. I believe both in the same season. So 3 no-hitters total. You have, a decent amount of arms in the bullpen. You got rid of, bad contracts that were on your pitching staff. They did some improvements to the bullpen. The Cubs pitching staff is not elite like it was when they had Chapman, when it had Lester in his prime, when it had all these different, pitching. But the Cubs are not the worst staff in the majors yet. We don't know that yet. On paper, they don't look bad, but they could perform bad. Who knows? But that's just my opinion. I know, Tony, I want to hear like what you're kind of like thinking when it comes to, I know you're a Sox guy, but in regards to the Cubs, pitching staff as a whole, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I am a Sox guy. I do watch tons of Cubs games though, because those Friday 1:20 starts are that's just heaven, baseball heaven. So I've seen my fair share of Cubs games, and I do agree with you on Darvish. Just raw talent, he's incredible. He's a great pitcher. One of the has some of the best stuff in the MLB. But I do agree with you also on the fact that what was the Astro or it was the Astros, right? That really threw him off his rhythm when he was tipping pitches and they were just taking him yabo after yabo. And I think that really rattled him. And then everyone, was chirping in his ear that maybe he's not, the guy they thought he was when they brought him over. And so I do think you kind of sold him at his peak, sold high. So I do think it was a good move, maybe a little early, but it was a good move overall. To go off Alec Mills, I love Alec Mills. I think he's going to be great. So I actually do overall completely agree with you that they do actually have a very good pitching staff on paper, but I think we'll see. The bullpen kind of struggled last year. I remember watching a couple of games, so I don't know if they're going to – I don't know. Maybe they'll figure it out this year, but I don't have the utmost confidence in their bullpen necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that's a Cubs theme. Besides 2016, we really never had like that amazing bullpen that you're just like the Cubs can go deep into games. Wade Davis was a guy the Cubs should have never gotten rid of because when we lost Wade Davis, that was just like what are you doing? Who are you paying? Stop getting starting pitching. You need guys that can close games too. And, I don't know if Theo and Jed's plan overall was to eventually turn Lester into that. But we all know Lester's personality because Lackey did it. John Lackey became a reliever, and big, strong, tough dude. I love John Lackey and his whole attitude on the field. But Lester was never going to be willing to be a closer. If he wanted to stay in and make another, $10 million just for the name on the roster to sell some jerseys. Otherwise, he was going to be a starter till he retired. And that's just kind of my viewpoint on it. But I don't know. I just, the Cubs have never been good at a staff. Like the Bears have never been good at a quarterback. The Cubs have never been good at a relief staff. And, you know, we always go back to the Bears when it comes to this kind of stuff, but you know, it's just that way. London, do you have any like last minute thoughts on the overview of the Cubs before we move into the White Sox?
Yeah, Tony, you hit it on the head there. You Darvish getting rid of him at that time, you know, selling him kind of at his high point was actually, I think, a really good move on the Chicago Cubs offseason. You know what I mean? They traded him to the Padres, who, you know, were willing to take on that contract to prepare to make a run at their, you know, division rival, the Dodgers, which we've been having a lot of trouble with the Dodgers, you know, since we kind of beat up on them, you know, 16, you know, 17, and then all of a sudden, you know, they piled on Mookie Betts and the boys and just have been, you know, running. So I thought it was a good deal. You know, we brought in several prospects. We brought in Zach Davies, who will probably be arguably probably our second most reliable pitcher behind Kyle Hendricks. You know, and he had a really good spring training. Granted, I don't really put everything on spring training and the performance of players, you know what I mean? I just don't, and I know we'll get into Eloy in a little while, but you know, I honestly overall, you know, you struggled a little bit, you know, when it comes to, like you said, media and stuff. So it was good to see him go. We sold high, and I love when Chicago teams sell high.
Yeah, and you know, London, we said it about the Bears. We always go back to the Bears. We've said it about pretty much every major league sports team. Preseason does not say anything anymore. Like it is practice reps for the guys who are the last 5 roster guys. You might as well throw them out there. And the Cubs were like the best team in the Cactus League this year, but you know, the Bears were 4-0, I think, when they went 3-13 a couple of years ago in the preseason. So there's nothing to write home about in regards to that. So let's kind of keep this moving. Let's kind of go into the White Sox as an overview. And this is coming from a diehard Cubs fan who, you know, for years could not even speak of the White Sox, but you know, you got to respect what they've done. You got to respect what they went through. And Tony, I used to always bust Sox fans' chops until last year that you guys were always like, World Series, we won it. And then everyone went silent because we could be like, you haven't been in the playoffs in 12 years? We've been in the playoffs 4 years in a row. So, you know, I think that I'm super happy for the White Sox and what they've built. I think they have the right GM in place. You know, the ownership was like, this is bad. Like, we can't even minor league teams have more fans than us in the stands. So expectations are from my end. And I know from Tony's end and at London, I know from you too. Expectations are high. Chicago needs a winning team right now. The Hawks are down. The Bulls, who knows, has a big trade, hasn't won a game yet. The Bears, God, don't even want to get into it. Another 8, going to be probably an 8-9 season or that first 8-1 season. The White Sox are the hope of the city right now to be young. They have a good core, a good young core. They have good pitching when healthy, and they have a good bullpen. That's something that we were just hitting on. I still think that they're one of the AL teams to beat. You know, preseason was not good to the White Sox, losing Eloy. That was just a very poor choice. We just kind of hit on it. Spring training's worthless to a degree. Baseball's different. You need that repetition, but you throw a guy out there for an inning. You don't keep him out there trying to catch foul balls over the fence or home runs over the fence. So, you know, I'm gonna kick this over to London first because Tony, I know you're gonna have the most to say about the White Sox, but London, overview of the White Sox going into the 2021 season.
The Chicago White Sox have gone, you know, from a rebuild mode to contender mode. Honestly, you know, once they brought in some young talent pretty quickly. I mean, Tatis Jr., not a lot of people know, was on the White Sox, you know, as a prospect. They got rid of him for, I don't know, a bucket of water. But they have just brought in really, really good young talent. And that's what the MLB is now. It's these young, flashy players, you know, like Luis Roberts, who I really, really like, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But going into this season, you know, they had the same kind of, you know, shortcut postseason last year in the wild card against the Oakland A's, you know, but the team enters 2021 with a great core. You know, they lost Eloy, which I know we'll hit on, but success is there. You know, they're ready to, you know, make a push. You know, they brought in They brought in some new acquisitions just in the decision makers, getting rid of Rick and Tony La Russa, and then, bringing in Hall of Famer manager was, I thought, a really, really great move. And just, the pitching, the lineup, everything like that is great. I mean, honestly, and I'll give a huge shout out to my dad and my godfather. They've been, diehard Cubs fans. And I get a phone call from my dad a couple days back. He was like, "Hey, your godfather, Uncle Wayne, and I were, having some Southern Comfort on the rocks and stuff, and we were talking about, baseball." And I'm like, "All right, this is such a Chicago thing, but here we go." And he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna be White Sox fans this year. We just wanted to let you know." And I just go, "Yeah, I know."
You
And
can't
I just
do
go,
that.
"Really?" I know. And I mean, and I just go, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah." They just like, they're going to be excited. I know we're going to get into predictions later, and they're like, the Cubs are going to compete and stuff, and that's great. But they're like, honestly, we used to go to the South Side all the time, and we're just excited that, the White Sox are actually going to be relevant and talked about. So the 60-year-old guys in Chicago right now, over some Southern Comfort, convince themselves that they're going to be White Sox fans. And honestly, that's kind of what's happening. So, as a preview and just kind of an overview, that's the excitement that they're bringing with just this star-studded talent, like I said, Luis Roberts and company to Chicago.
I think you're right. I will never say I am fully a White Sox fan. Sorry, Tony. I will never say it. I will support them in the playoffs if they are not playing the Cubs in the World Series. But you got to respect that too. Like, Uncle Wayne, I mean, I don't know, man. Was the Southern Comfort talking, or was that you actually talking? Your true feelings come out when you're, a little under the devil's juice. So
yeah, it might have been the Southern. I mean, it might have been the Southern Comfort, honestly. But again, they are just old Chicago fans.
Sure.
They were there through the '80s with the great Bears teams, and the '90s with Jordan and everybody, and they're just kind of like, ugh. You know what
Let's
I mean?
win. Let's win.
They're just tired, and they're just like, yeah, the Cubs had that stint in 16, and we've had good teams, we've made the playoffs, but they're like, we're just ready for some more excitement, some young excitement again, and that's what the White Sox are pretty much portraying to everybody that they're going to bring.
All right, so Tony, now that you got Uncle Wayne on your team, like let's hear what's going on over here.
So, as we know, as Chicago sports fans, expectations are always exactly what happens, especially high expectations. So, I will say I am a little nervous, especially now hearing you guys like, oh, they're definitely going to be good. Yeah, that always works out. So,
just another year, baby. That's what we're all about over here.
Exactly. So, moving on from my worries, I'll get excited. London, great point on Tony La Russa. I think he just knows how to win. And this team, what Rick Renteria really did wrong last year was he overmanaged. Like he was putting like Carlos Rondon. They have two guys, same name. It's weird. Putting him in to close games against like the Cleveland no names, because they don't have a name right now, at the end of the year, and like blowing the game, give up 5 runs, stuff like that. He just really overmanaged. And I think TLR is really going to do better just letting the boys play. That was a big thing when he came in. Tim Anderson basically said like, he's not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to, I'm still going to bat flip. I'm still going to, live my life. And Tony La Russa said, okay, you win, let's do it. And that's what I'm really excited for, just letting the guys go, letting these young guys go. Younger guys like Dylan Cease, who I know we're not putting a lot into spring training, had an awesome game yesterday. So
had to say it. You had to say it.
Just had to mention it. But I think he is going to have a breakout year. They got this new pitching coach, Ethan Katz, I believe his name is, because they got rid of the old veteran whose name just left my brain. So this is unfortunate. Don Cooper, there it is. And I really think that has helped so far. Everyone said nothing but the best about him. That pitching staff in general, that was our biggest thing against like the A's, especially when we got knocked out of the playoffs. Giolito didn't have a great game the first game. Dallas Keuchel killed it. But then we did like a full-on bullpen game, another Renteria mismanaged game. But now I think we got, we'll talk about it, but we got Gio, Dallas Keuchel, Lance Lynn, Dylan Cease. I think we're going to see a lot of that fifth game, the fifth starter. It's going to be a lot of bullpen action because we do have Garrett Crochet. So that's pronounced, not Crotchet like I thought. We still got Cody Hoyer, Matt Foster. I'll just run through the names real quick. Michael Kopech's back. They're kind of going to ease him in. And then obviously Aaron Bummer, and we'll get to Hendricks as well. But I'm excited. Moncada's back. He's healthy. So
a couple things I just want to bring up with you real fast, coming from a Cubs fan's perspective, is Rick Renteria. Is that how you say his name?
Mm-hmm.
He was the Cubs manager the year before the Cubs won the World Series, bringing in Joe Maddon. So you guys bringing in another, also following in the Cubs' footsteps. I had to say that you guys are now following in the Cubs' footsteps. Is that same exact situation? Young team, a lot of potential, young arms, fun prospects people are excited about. You bring in a Hall of Fame manager, and you're not sure what this manager is going to do with that team. It's kind of like when, the Bulls got Billy Donovan. No one knew what that, what the real Bulls potential was because you had an egghead running the old team. And then boom, you bring in a guy who knows how to win World Series. Joe Maddon did not. He's been to the World Series with the Rays. But I think as a Cubs fan, I want you to be excited for this kind of stuff. And also for a guy to put up his hand with his World Series, one of his World Series rings on, he could have chosen a couple that night, get pulled over and shows the cop saying, "Do you know who I am?" And then getting stabbed with that DUI. I mean, I think that's the Chicago way right there. You get that's how Chicagoans do it. That's South Side way. This guy was meant for it. Joe Maddon's got that, like hippie kind of vibe to him, that Wrigleyville, like hipsterish kind of deal with the van. Boom, Cubs right there. Tony La Russa, hardcore Italian, coached the team before, pulling out a ring for a DUI. I respect the hell out of that. I do not encourage DUIs. I hate DUIs. It's ruined lives. But I think that's funny as hell. Like, you can't even deny that's funny as hell. So with that, I agree with everything that you're saying. Luis Robert was snubbed of a Rookie of the Year, by the way. But you guys also have the last AL MVP. I don't care if it was COVID season or not. That guy was putting up numbers. I mean, he averaged an RBI a game. That's numbers. So I agree with you. As a Cubs fan who doesn't know nearly as much as you do about the Sox, I got them. We're going to go into predictions in a little bit. We're kind of running low on time here, so we kind of want to move into offseason impacts really fast. But, we kind of hit on these already. I'll just start with the Cubs really fast. Darvish gone. See you later. Victor Cantini, I don't really care that he's gone. I thought he was overrated as a backup catcher. See you later. I'm actually gaining sleep over losing sleep than that guy being on the roster anymore. London, Tony, thoughts on that?
Nothing.
Yeah, Cantini, he was going with Darvish no matter what. That was his guy, catcher. Like Ross and Lester. So it makes sense.
It makes total sense. I mean, like, speaking of that, it'd be funny if David Ross was like, "Yeah, I'm coming out of retirement, out of managing to go to Washington to be with Schwarber and Lester again." Cubs signed Jock Peterson. No one saw that coming, which is that's big after getting rid of Albert Almora. It's a good, cheap contract. I know I've been ripping on people for saying that they had a good spring training, but Jock had like an unbelievable spring training, 1,000 OBS. They even wrote on ESPN, if he cut it in half, he'd still be in one of the top in the league for on-base percentage. So excited about that, but he also was playing in warm weather. He did well in LA, warm weather. Who knows how he's going to do in that first month or two in Chicago. A lot of players don't like the cold, but, fired up about that. Nico Hoyer goes down to the minors, but they're doing exactly what they did with Bryant back in 2015 when he had his MVP season to save them from, paying him a boatload of money. That's another thing that pisses me off about the Cubs is that they don't respect when money's due. And Nico has been one of the better young guys on this team. So, business is business. And then Ian Happ staying obviously is big, but the Rizzo contract's a smack to the face. So going back to, we already hit on those really fast, but I want to go back to Nico really fast. Tony, what do you think in regards to when players are in this situation on rookie contracts when they should get paid and teams, go through that loophole of keeping them in the minors for 30 games and then bringing them up?
It's funny. I actually was going to talk about that kind of a little with the Sox. I was going to say how they kind of tried. They did that with Eloy, but other than that, like they just signed Andrew Vaughn
right.
but they've signed all these guys to these like 7-year, like $40 million, $50 million deals. And they take it because they're like, this is the most money by far I've ever seen in my life. And I get to play right away. So I like how they've kind of skirted on that. I understand why I shouldn't like the service time rule. However, I'm not a Major League Baseball player. I'm a fan of a Major League Baseball team, and I root for the team. You know, if it gets the guy to stay another year, I'm sorry he doesn't get to buy another house, but you know,
Doesn't get the Maserati this year, maybe next
yeah.
year. London, any thoughts on when players have to pay their service dues and not get that big money in another year of their contract?
Listen, business is business, and that's that's just what it is.
Put it out there. Business is business. That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And then London, I feel like you're an Ian Happ guy. I don't know. From what way we talked, thoughts on Ian Happ staying, finding a way to, fill in that contract. Cubs paid him pretty well too.
Yeah, well, we need him. We need him, especially. I mean, let's see here. We're bringing Jock, so that's a really good acquisition. Jason Hayward has still been a really solid Golden Glove, and I think Ian Happ is again another player that has been very consistent on defense and also offensively. And so keeping that here just to keep the mojo going, especially for the Cubs and what we need with this coming up season, I do. I thought it was a good. I thought it was good to bring him back. It's great to have him. Great to see him. Still in a Cubs jersey, because we have to keep some kind of regularity. Because like I said, the more and more we go, the further away we go from 2016, the less and less this team is going to look the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head right there. And that's a problem with a lot of Chicago teams. I know it happens with the Bears, the Bulls, the Hawks. Fans want to keep these guys around, like Seabrook on the Blackhawks. Perfect example. Fans wanted him to stay around. Dude couldn't even play anymore. Just be honest with yourself and retire. And I think that was the best move for him. And then, like we've all said, MLB is a business. Major league teams are a business. You can't just keep these guys around forever. Rizzo's a different story because he still is a good player. But if he was 39, wanted $20 million a year, you can't do that. You got cap, you got all that situations. Tony, I see you got a couple of notes on the Cubs. You want to run through them real fast?
Yeah, sure. So I know London touched on the Davies addition. Obviously, that was in part of the Darvish trade, if I'm mistaken. And I've always liked him. He was on the Brewers at one point. I've been to Miller, well, whatever it's called now, American Family Home, Insurance Field Park, whatever. Ton. And I remember always watching him. He was good. Not great, good. So I think that'll be a good addition. The Quintana experiment is done. We won the trade. It happens.
Yeah, we know.
Pedro Strop and Schwarber obviously gone. Those were kind of some key guys in the run, but it did kind of run its course. Schwarber, I think they probably could have brought him back for cheap, but I understand why they moved on. And then the last guy I kind of want to touch on was Jake Marisnick. He is going to be an interesting utility guy that, one, he has a great name, and two, I think he's going to be a guy that Cubs fans kind of fall in love with during the season because he can play everywhere. Like I was looking at the depth chart before, and he was listed as like the second guy in almost every single position. So he's not going to start, but when any of the outfielders need a break, Ian Happ, is taking a day off, whatever, he'll be out there. He'll make a play, and everyone's gonna be like, "This guy's awesome." So yeah.
Yeah, so we're running low on time. We want to make sure that we get through the White Sox really fast. But one guy I'm going to speak to is Liam Hendricks. That is a Chicago White Sox guy. Crazy personality, crazy good closer. From what he's done in the past for the Oakland A's, I think that's a great addition. Screams White Sox style. Lance Lynn, obviously a big move from Texas, and Adam Eaton was another big offseason signing. So, London, Tony, super fast. Who you thinking is the best overall moves for the White Sox this year? We'll go into predictions. We'll do 1 minute predictions each, and then we'll end up closing.
Do you want me to? I'll start. So I'll be very quick though. Yeah, Andrew Vaughn, I'm going to count that as an addition. He's going to be in the opening day lineup. He's going to be playing some left field. Should be big with Eloy being out. The Adam Eaton signing with Eloy being out is looking big now because now they can do Angle and left, Vaughn, DH, kind of make that all work. And then quick shout out to Dane Dunning and James McCann. I'm going to miss them. I understand why they had to leave, but those were two of my favorite players on the Sox past couple of years. So,
London, anyone else on the White Sox that you're happy?
Mine's losing Eloy. Eloy, that was tough, especially on spring training. That's my biggest thing for the White Sox.
The pain hurts, but the truth is real. So just got to move on from that. Hopefully he'll be back by the playoffs if the White Sox were to make the playoffs. But there's been some crazy recoveries the last couple of years. You never know. Finally, we're going into season predictions. We're going to run through this super fast. Obviously, we're going to start with the Cubs. Totally biased. I got the Cubs going 87-75. I think they do still have, this is the last year, potentially this core is going to stay together. Like I said earlier, if pitching stays on top of things, they could do well. If Jake Arrieta were to go back to his old form for one more year, I got 87-75, but it's going to be really tough with the St. Louis Cardinals in the division this year. I got them as a wild card team, and the playoffs are the playoffs. Whatever happens, happens. London, predictions on the Cubs.
Yeah, I got 89-73, and I think that they actually contest the St. Louis Cardinals. I think they're a little overhyped.
Whoa!
Nolan was good. It was a good acquisition, but I screw the Cardinals.
Like the attitude, man. That's a real Cubs fan speaking right there. Tony, what are you thinking?
I got them 79-83. I do think they'll probably find a way to sneak into the wild card. I just think those contracts are going to linger. That rumor mill is going to linger, but they're still really talented. Like they'll sneak in, I think.
Yeah, and that's if they don't trade anyone at the deadline.
That's all.
And that's a very big possibility. If it comes down to anyone, you got Bryant again. You have Bryant, you have Baez, you have Contreras, you have Rizzo. So pretty much your entire infield. Someone might be going at the deadline, depending on how the season's going. Going into the White Sox really fast, I got them at 95-67. I think they're winning the division. I think that the White Sox could make it to the World Series very easily this year. Obviously, the playoffs are the playoffs, but they are the team. Even without Eloy, they are a very tough team to beat. London, predictions.
98-64, and I think they contest for the best record in the league.
Woo! All right, Tony, this is your team. What are you thinking, man?
I had one win less than London. I do think they're still young. They're still kind of putting some pieces together. Losing Eloy was kind of big. So I had 97-65. Win the divisional series, probably, and then make it to the ALCS. Probably lose to the Yankees if I'm being honest, but I think it'll be a great year to build off of.
It's an excited year for Chicago baseball, and I think that both sides know it. And when it comes down to the Crosstown Cup, now that we're going to have fans in the stands, I think it's going to be much more intense than this past year. And it was fun with, the COVID schedule, playing within your region. We played the Sox more than we usually would. The Sox played the Cubs more than they usually would. So it was a lot of fun. But, with that, a lot of information for today, and we appreciate you all listening. Tony, thank you for bringing your baseball expertise onto this. We are usually a Bears Bulls dominated podcast, but we got to start throwing everyone else in there now that it's warm out. The summer shandies are coming out, the spotted cows are coming out. We will be having a drinking episode soon in the near future in regards to baseball. Hell, we might even do a rooftop interview in the near future. But with that, London, thank you for also joining as always. A lot of fun. But my name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside London Beth and Tony Sapita. We had a great time today. We hope you did too. Thank you very much. Go Cubs, go Sox, and we'll see you guys next time.